weeks to open the webinar up so we can actually have videos allowed. Unfortunately, Zoom has changed its functionality slightly with regards to webinars and meetings. And this is a webinar hosted event, and webinars don't allow for video as far as we can tell. We're going to try and change that from Thursday onwards so we can open a meeting up and then have video recorded and see each other's faces as well. So the first request from our side is, because it's quite a big audience, if we can just mute ourselves, you're more than welcome to unmute yourself and talk to us and ask you questions. It's just about trying to reduce the background noise from kids and dogs and horses and birds, whatever else it may be, and just not interfere with the sound over computers. If you want to ask a question, you're more than welcome to raise your hand. So there is a function for raising your hand in Zoom. Otherwise, the chat function is available, or just unmute yourself and talk. Like I say, we don't use the video channels, but we will look at how we can change that for the next meetings. And then get involved. This is a prime time to connect, to ask questions, share some frustrations or thinking, and let's have a nice chat about it and see how we can drive it forward. And then we are recording the session, so unless there are any objections to that, we're recording it, and we'll be sharing it as part of our link with relevant documentation information around the COVID virus and how it's working. All right, a quick reminder, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but effectively we believe that every business goes through about 4 stages. There's a startup phase where it's all about survival. We fight for every single cent we earn, and business seems like it really is just struggling along and not moving as fast as we want it to be. And I think for most businesses, we are either there at the moment and were there before the COVID virus, or we are currently getting back to that point now where we feel like we're fighting for every rand and cent and trying to make things work. The next stage looks at a lifestyle. So can my business afford me to have a lifestyle, and can my business effectively ensure that I have a certain life I lead? Moving past that point, we start looking at how do we optimize and grow our business. So we look at how do we scale. And that starts talking to the implementation of defined processes, company structures, and more or less customization to how we operate, because we need that stability and that standardization around our business. And the last part, where we want to try and get all our customers and all of our business to be on, is to be a sellable business. And that doesn't mean we sell, it just means we have a freedom of choice. We can choose to sit back, we can choose for the business to run without us, we can choose to hand it over, or we can choose to effectively sell our assets and take the capital out of it and retire peacefully into the sunset and the beaches as we see fit.
All right, nice, Damion. Just quickly, Damion, if you can just go back to the slide. So it's definitely a big discussion point lately. To what extent do we enjoy our lifestyle businesses? And really quite usually they refer to lifestyle business as small business. And in my world, I don't like the word one-man show with small business necessarily. I prefer that we're all in business, and the lifestyle business is really where we all have evolved to in a modern era. And it will be interesting to see after the pandemic and the lockdown now, to see how we're actually going to enjoy more or get more out of our investments, and at which one of these 4 stages we're actually going to start into. Because it's great to scale, but with it comes costs. It comes a lot of high risk. If you want to be sellable, of course, it's a lot of importance in, but people are throwing an eye at lifestyle and seeing what can they actually get from the business in a typical environment where there are challenges in the economy, but also a government type of guidelines and bureaucratic type of red tape in your challenging your way of living through your business at times. So just interesting points.
Okay, thank you. All right, just a quick reminder on some of the key factors we consider when we talk about a sellable business, or taking the time and the effort to start building your business to work on it rather than in it. One of the starting points and key starting points for us will always be around financial planning and financial management. So do I have a hand on how my business is running and how my business is managing its accounts and its forecasting? The next stage is looking at how quickly can I scale, and what elements of my business can I scale rapidly, and into which markets can I push that? The next factor looks at risk. So am I currently at risk from being too reliant on one key employee, one key customer, or one key supplier? Now, if you're a solo entrepreneur or a business owner with a PTY, but you are the only employee in your business, then a key risk would be that you as the business owner are a risk to the company, because if you stop working, the business stops working as well. So risk Risk looks at those three factors and how we can mitigate the risk of being overly reliant on either one of those. We then have cash flow, and I'm sure I'd never talk about cash flow with you guys. A huge risk of any business, we don't have money to spend. We may have huge amounts of invoice, huge amounts of money that we have projected or we quoted on, but if the money isn't in the bank, it doesn't exist effectively. Recurring revenue looks at how do we build a structure where our revenue becomes more predictable. I don't think any revenue in the world is 100% predictable because anything can happen. And I think, again, it proves with the current state of our economy that anything can happen. But how do we make our revenue more predictable and more budgetable for us to be able to work on it as well? We look at differentiation. So how do we differentiate our business as compared to our competitors? So can we stand out from the crowd? And then we look at customer service. How does customer service affect my referability? And do I understand what my customers are saying about me and how they are presenting me to potentially friends, families, and colleagues? And can I build on that relationship and try and drive more success out of that? And then lastly, we look at succession planning and how to build a company structure so that we can remove the business owner from what we call the owner's trap, where you are stuck doing everything and instead start looking to hand over key elements or key functions of your business to people who are experts within those industries. So those are the 8 factors that we will look at as part of any business operation to justify either the value of the business or how involved the business owner is. And if you as a business owner can't sit and objectively view those items or talk about those items, the chances are you haven't either focused on them or you aren't realizing they're actually there and are either an issue or not an issue. So we drive very hard to try and get these factors across to any client or people we speak to. And then a quick reminder, we are sharing a lot of information from UIF submissions forms, feedback from the business world about how to handle the COVID-19, some suggestions and recommendations, paperwork, anything that relates back to how to deal or process to follow during this pandemic and how to keep your business alive. We have a shared folder where we literally are just storing any bit of information we have, and you're welcome to this information if needed. All right, so today we are talking as OptiGrowth about what we do effectively and how we see business changing post the COVID-19 pandemic, and where we see the key elements that a business needs to take or think about now to prepare for that stage post the COVID-19 pandemic. So to start it off, we're looking at the changing of your operating model and how we're moving into a whole new world. And I hope that you guys will appreciate my joke in the next slide. But just a few things to remind you of. There are very clear things or the suggestions we have to any business owner right now. And that is, it's a very tough time. We're all going through very tough things. But if you are changing something, change it with speed. So any strategy you make now for the betterment of your company going forward, make sure you implement it as fast as possible. You don't have time to wait because more than likely either your competitors or things will change too dramatically to revert back again. So rather change it with speed. Make sure you are doing it with the right intent. So be committed and be focused to it. Be transparent. So share your goals and share your plans with your key stakeholders. And that can be your staff, it can be your customers and even your suppliers. So as an example, if you can't pay suppliers, rather open up communication and talk to them. Right? And then look to an environment where you can cooperate with all parties involved. Okay. So we're going into a whole new world, and I hope you guys appreciate my joke here with Aladdin singing on his magic carpets, or I think it was whatever name was singing. But effectively, everyone is talking about it, and we've mentioned it multiple times. The position we're in right now is not one for protection. We have to think about how do we adapt, and how will the business world look, and how my business cope with that new world post this pandemic, because there's no ways we will go back to normal. JFK had a very nice quote that said, "Change is a law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future." And I think it's very relevant now for where we are at the moment. Businesses are closing around us. Consumers are going to be spending a lot less, and money isn't as freely available as what it used to be. So how do we adapt to that, and how do we change our business functions and our models to suit that world post 9/11, post the COVID virus? All right. Anyone disagree with that? Anyone think we are wrong by thinking we're going to be changed, or we're going to have a whole different environment when we come out of COVID? Okay.
Damion, maybe just from my side. So I think COVID is here to stay, as any flu is, as malaria is, and it's going to be a challenge for us to, of course, overcome the problem and get vaccines in and all kinds of things. But it's I think, unquestionable that we never had a pandemic like this globally. We are suddenly closer to each other. If you think how much we know about COVID virus around the world and the interest that we have globally and how people are connecting. If I just look at the attendance list today, people are interested to know where to go forward to. They've got ideas, they've got fears, aspirations. And so it's definitely the time to look to the future, no question about it. But COVID is here to stay. It's not going to go away.
So as an example of how it changes, we had Andre, the big positive guy, in, I think it was a week or two ago now. And one thing he's focused on and specialized on was, what are the positive outcomes of moving forward past COVID-19? And a big discussion there was the fact that we are going to be far closer to each other due to the fact that Zoom and things like webinar availability and connectivity is yet to stay again. Now, we've all learned we can do it. We've all learned we have to do it. So chances are your business environment and operating environment will definitely change, at least from that perspective already.
Damion,
So
Jan has got a question.
Yeah. Jan, you there?
How are they going to change?
There we go. Jan, you?
I think the thing, I guess I hear what you're saying about we all definitely learning to use our technology more efficiently. But yeah, it's the how. I mean, everybody knows it's going to change, but it's the how. That's what I think we've all got to look at.
100%.
And maybe a bit more home-based. Yeah, in our way of doing things. Yeah, so I don't know what people's take is on that, how they, whether they're already seeing how things are going to be different. Just a thought.
So on that question, Jan, do you think that the reliance on a physical office space and typical rental plan for businesses will be adapting and changing slightly, or do you think it will remain as it was previously?
No, that's going to that's definitely going to change. A lot of people that I've spoken to have suddenly said, "Wow, we don't have to travel as much." I'm watching 2 young people working from my own home. There's a lot of frustration with it too, because my daughter started a new job literally in the middle of lockdown. So she's feeling a bit disconnected from things because she hasn't actually had, so there needs to be a bit of both, I would say. You do still need some way of connecting physically, but I think it's going to be a lot less.
Awesome. Okay.
And I'm hoping from my perspective that the more home-based people become, the more interested they become in what's going on around their homes.
100%.
That is true. Karen, you got a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to say, I've actually, interestingly, today I've had this conversation with several people, and 2 of them are my customers who I have been trying to get them to engage with me online and use sharing platforms like Dropbox or Google Drive or Cloudbox. And they've always in the past, they've like dismissed it. And it's so funny because now today it's like come full circle, and now they're telling me how wonderful it is. So I was just smiling and listening to them talk. So that's quite interesting. And I also had an interesting discussion with someone in the tourism industry, and how that industry is starting to put policies and things in place for when the dust settles and things move forward. And it's all this whole hygiene protection thing. So there's going, in my mind, there's going to be a lot of policies to protect ourselves, from a hygiene perspective, but then also we're also going to have to learn to maintain that human connection. Even though it becomes a lot more virtual, it's still important to maintain that human connection.
Awesome.
No, that is true. Paula, comment from your side?
I must say I'm finding the technology very challenging. So like having to learn how to use Zoom, all those things. And I just wanted to share, a friend of mine is doing free introduction to Zoom classes, and I can send Henk the details if anyone's interested.
Thanks, Paula. Yeah, no, it's definitely changing times, and I think like Jan has also said, we actually want to get to the know how are we actually going to change our way of operating business, because I think the obvious things are now staring us in the face. We hear it regurgitated by many experts, but some of us, and including myself, sometimes struggle to think what is it I'm actually really going to do to take on the new challenges. Adrian, you've got your hand raised.
Hank, sorry. I think an important thing that we should be doing now is not only looking at how we're going to get through this particular phase, but also asking ourselves the questions of how, and trying to interrogate it in a discussion with other people, is how can I change my business for the longer term? Not only changing it for this month, this year, but how, what does my business look like in 5 years' time? Where am I going with it, and how can I use the learnings from this time to completely transform the way that I do things?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that's why Damion mentioned there's 8 factors, and it's something that we use as a guideline to measure and benchmark ourselves with, Adrian and team.
Yeah,
it's definitely again, the theory is there, but the practical implementation. As an example, one of the key factors is cash flow. And we've just decided that, wherever we can help people with cash flow is to actually look in the short term. Literally, do we know what our bank balance is going to be at the end of May? Literally, our bank balance.
yes.
And not just a short term cash flow forecast is another type of methodology or theory. It's actually, what is my cash flow going to be like at a time? So challenging times. James, you also have a comment?
Just something that I'm hoping might also be a positive of this is to take on more of the philosophies that people are taking. Is it some of the Scandinavian countries of shorter working days? That people have just got more time to actually be with their families and not to get caught up in now, because I've got technology right at my fingertips, that it's like this umbilical cord, but then you start working crazy hours, but rather to actually say, well, I'm saving time with traveling, and that one can put that into things that add to the quality of your life.
All right, listen, guys, we have to move, so we are going to be running out of time. So I just want to move. I know there are a few more hands up, but I want to, like Adrian mentioned, there's the question, and Jan, actually, how do we start adapting? Where do we look at my business now to start putting that adaptation or those ideas of adaptation into place? So we pulled 5 factors out that we think you should focus on in the short term to try and make our decisions easier and how to move it forward. So if you don't mind, I'm going to move on quickly, and we can keep talking after that. But I just want to try and get to some of the detail quickly and share some more information before we get too workshoppy. All right. So the first part we want to look at is your company structure. So how do you, if things are going to change, does your old way of doing things, your old company structure, still fit for that new way of doing things? And does it support your next move? So one thing we look at quite heavily in OptiGrowth is, do you have a company organogram? And if you don't, now is the time to do it. So a company organogram effectively looks at, can I list down the key functions in the business that I need to concern myself about? So those being in any organization will be a sales and marketing component, which is generally lodged under or put under a commercial division. We look at an operational department or division. We look at HR, we look at finance. And those are some of the key elements or structures that every company will have. In your own business, there may be different parts to it. There may be as part of a bakery, there may be a baking component, there may be an icing component. As part of a landscaping business, there'll be a landscaping and a maintenance component. So depending on your company structure and your business you run, you may have different functions, but it's good to list those functions out and then build the team underneath that. So when we talk about company organogram, we always talk about listing those key functions, understanding and defining the functions as a division, a department, and potentially a business unit. Deciding who fulfill those roles, because some human being has to do it. And if you are a one-man band, then more than likely you are fulfilling all those functions. You are doing your bookkeeping, you are doing your data's collection, you are doing your delivery, you are doing your marketing and selling. But if you list those functions out, you may realize there are some areas you can either outsource or there may be some areas you're not that good at and you want to maybe hand over to someone else to assist you with. And then lastly, we need to also consider looking at what the KPIs are and what the capacity for that work function is. So as an example, if we have to deliver what OptiGrowth does, so we effectively sell hours in a day, we have the capacity to eat between Henk and Barbara and Damion to sell 8 hours per day. We can't do more than that because there's not much more time in a day normally than that anyway. So do we, as the three of us, have enough time to deliver to the amount of customers we need? And taking that sort of role or that look will help us define how well is our organization built right now? And if I need to make cuts, where can I make cuts? And I think Henk will agree with me, the one thing that a lot of people are doing at the moment in this tough time, which is a very nice thing, is they're trying to protect every single staff member's job as well as they can. But by thinking like that, what we tend to do is we tend to look at everyone as a whole rather than looking at our key performers and potentially our worst performers in individual lights. Because if my business is going to have to retract and make myself smaller, the people I want to take with me are the ones who are the best workers, the ones who are there to work with me and to make my business better going forward. And now is the time to start looking at those key performers and keeping those key performers in your business to build your business from the start again. And I think a lot of businesses are struggling with that concept. And one way of identifying that is by building a company organogram and seeing where everyone fits in. So I want to ask, if you don't mind, I want to ask George, because he's probably the one customer I've done this with quite recently, how he's found building his company structure and going through this sort of discussion with us.
Hello. Obviously, since the crisis happened, we've had to look at our business in a different way. And if you think that you're going to open and try and keep the model exactly the same, then you might as well close right now. And one of the biggest aspects from our side was staff. Being a bakery, we just over 20 staff members, and all of them fulfill a certain role. So with Damion and Desiree and Sharice, who's our operations manager, we looked at it and said, why do we have so many people, for example, working in the baking department? When is baking busy? What happens on the days that they aren't busy, and can we not do with them on those days? Or could you rather get an all-rounder, someone that can bake and can ice cakes? Because obviously you're celebrating on a Saturday mainly, so everything gears up towards the weekend. So Monday, Tuesday would be big for baking because you got to get prepared and get the sponges done, and then it's compiling, and obviously by the end of the weekend it's putting the whole thing together. So we've looked at it in that way and see that we are completely overstaffed in a production perspective. And unfortunately, it does mean that the bulk of our turnover does go towards staff, and we could cut there. And that's already one place we're looking at.
Yeah, so maybe to add to that, one thing we discussed in Tessa Baker particularly was how do we structure a seniority level. So how do we get a junior baker, or forget the title now, a junior baker to a senior baker, and what are the descriptions between those different levels? So somebody who's a senior baker should be able to fulfill the function of a junior baker and a normal baker, as an example. So when it comes to having to cut costs and put measures in place where my business survives and moves past the point where I no longer have revenue to support everyone, I can ask my senior baker to take over those two capacities of those other two lower level functions if they have time available. Because the big thing here is time. If I was producing 400 cakes a day and now going to 100 cakes a day, I definitely don't need as many employees baking cakes anymore. And one person can probably fulfill all the functions and roles of that particular person. So again, it just goes back to whatever my model is and however I see my business, my organization working, I need to identify where are the capacities, what are the functions, and who are the people in those functions. Because if I can do that, I can make decisions quite quickly and easily about where I can cut or where I shouldn't cut. Does anyone disagree with that, or anyone feel differently about that?
Yeah, I just want to add, Damion, we have to be a bit clinical on this. So you mentioned emotions go with it as well. It's not the best thing, the nice thing in the world to actually ask somebody to leave your business. But in the end, it's about survival. It's an investment we made as business owners, and it's actually to protect the rest of the structure, not just our employees, but also our suppliers, our customers primarily. They expect a service from us, and we need to survive. So it's a clinical approach. And the second point is we should also be transparent. So in this whole process, even if we're just a single owner, business owner, and we don't really employ many staff, maybe 1 or 2 people with us, we should still have an organogram to identify those key functions of our business, and to try and drive transparency in communicating this to our stakeholders. Our customers need to know how we structure where we're going. And for those staff members that are involved in any discussions, they need to know what our plans are moving forward. So I think that's also important.
Yeah, see, Mandy, your hand's up. All right, but did they make any hear us?
James also had his hand up earlier. James, have you got a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about what I'm doing with my business, but yeah, I think it's important, at my time at F&B and these places, it is difficult to cut people and that, and you don't really want to do that, but I think it's important what I'm doing for my business. Just to give you a bit of background, I started 8 years ago, and just that was basically after 2008, we hit a lot of companies badly. And after that, the New Companies Act came in, and the audit profession lost something like about 80 to 90% of the audits that they were doing. So the accounting practice got really clogged very badly. And I decided at that stage to try and minimize whatever I could. So I worked from home, subcontracting to people, and then just paying them for what they're doing. So not per hour or per that, but if you finish this job, you get this much. And that helped me a hell of a lot to survive. And even now, I don't have basically any overhead, so it really helps. And the good thing for me is with things changing, people who were looking down at you and say, so why don't you have an office? And they're saying, okay, that's a good way to do it, so let's do it as well. So I think offices will get smaller as well, and that will also be a good place to look at cutting overheads, and then at least going back to their landlord and say, listen, demand is lower, so please reduce the rent at least. So it could be a bit of a saving for somebody in that as well.
Yeah, James. So we had early in one of our sessions last week, we've had somebody raising the question of the labor law, and to what extent can we not pay people salaries now? To what extent can we retire some jobs or functions of our business? And the impact: can people sue us? Can they take us to the CCMA? Is this legal? Besides the emotional stress on it, there are also formalities and legalities we've got to consider. And in my opinion, which is an unqualified opinion, I think government is understanding that we as business owners are in a spot. We need to survive, and I think we have an opportunity, a window of opportunity here to take action where we may not be as exposed, perhaps, to some of the formalities and some of the regulations. Now, this of course needs to be qualified. This needs to be qualified, of course, for each of us in our own specific positions. But we've seen people taking action and actually recovering from it, leading up to this pandemic already. I'm talking January, February, and into the March, April period now. So again, there's a window of opportunity. Damion mentioned earlier on, we've got to act with speed here. We've got to be transparent, and we have to do it with real intent. So
I think we've lost Hank. Just to quickly add to that, so while we get Hank back online, one of the nice things that this could also bring about for us is that on-demand economy. Salary. There's a growing trend now with the sort of the 25 to 35-year-olds where they are able to work remotely and they bill and charge for an on-demand service. So that's another alternative you can go to as a business owner. If you have staff, you can start paying them for work delivered, not for a fixed term salary as well as an option. But again, it just makes it a bit more complicated, and it may be a little bit more murky, a little bit more gray than being black and white saying, I need you, I don't need you. Mandy, is your mute button still not working?
No, I found it. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, guys. In my industry, I get a lot of, I get stock from China. So it's made me realize that I need to address certain of my suppliers and say, no, we need to support local, particularly from the handcraft side, like baskets and presentation boxes for hampers and gourmet hampers, etc. So that's something I was juggling in terms of my business planning and strategies as to local is lekker, let's look after our own people.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, so moving on, guys. So the next item we want to discuss about the looking forward part is your revenue models. So unfortunately, reality is if you don't sell, you die. And the question now is, how do we find a way of bringing money in? Now, for a lot of us, businesses either reduce substantially or our businesses are closed completely and we aren't operating at all. And the question now is there another way of being able to find a revenue stream or some way of getting revenue? And if possible, we may want to reconsider how we look at our revenue streams and try and drive a more recurring revenue stream as well, which means my revenue becomes more predictable, and I can potentially put on a contract, which means I can secure that revenue over a longer term period. The first thing to look at when we're looking at creating new revenue models is, can we create more customer value? So are we satisfying an existing need, or are we creating to satisfy new needs? Now, I know it sounds quite fancy, but as an example, the need to develop face masks right now is huge. And that could be, if you are capable of producing face masks, it could be a way of adding to your services or changing your services and products to bring on that revenue stream. Once you've identified that, the question goes around marketing and branding your solutions, and then selling. How do we go selling online or offline? Now, at this point, most of us, if we can't sell, the only way to sell is to go to an online space, right? So we have to check or rethink the current revenue streams we are getting into our businesses. Where do we change that? Why are we changing that? And does that mean we are changing our revenue model going forward? Or is it just a short-term win? So anyone want to talk about that? I think, Helen, would you mind sharing with us what you've done so far?
Hi, everyone. Yes, thanks, Damion. So we've had a number of discussions, and even long before this whole coronavirus situation, is the challenge was I run an early childhood development center. Physically, we are dependent on our location, and that location has limitations in terms of how many children we can accommodate in that space as per square meterage, which obviously if that's your only focus, your scalability is affected, where you're not able to grow beyond what you are licensed to accommodate in a particular physical space. And I think what the pandemic has done now going forward is forced me to actually really hone in on solutions and offerings beyond our physical space. The market that I mainly, not only, but mainly catered to would be, more blue collar and domestic workers going down the income bracket. So the access to technology and advanced technology is also limited to a certain extent, whereas making even the virtual classroom and the material that we've been trying to share, there's been many limitations, but there are opportunities. So what I'm exploring is how to enable a parent or make our service more accessible off-site. There's a number of parents that obviously have either had their salary slashed, which means their income is going to be limited, yet they still have a desire and a need for our type of service. And I'm looking at what solutions and how to besides converting our material to more virtual based platforms, what type of equipment and like tablets or even VR goggles, those type of things that we could source in order to either on a rental basis or a write-out purchase basis for parents to access the material that we're creating. So I don't know if that made sense.
That it definitely makes sense. So thanks, Helen. I just want to add to that. So Helen's got quite a unique situation where obviously, like she mentioned, her market's a blue collar market. So anything that requires data, virtual services, online platforms is going to be a huge task to either deliver, or secondly, if it can be delivered, to be consumed by her primary consumers or primary markets. The question that Helen asked me about that particular point was, is there really any need, or maybe the words are wrong, but is there, how difficult, it's very difficult to get that need across, and it's very difficult to get past those needs. And the answer to her was, and I want to share with you guys, is no new effort we do now is going to be easy, right? So by identifying what you want to do and identifying the revenues and the markets you want to go to and the service you want to offer, it allows an opportunity to identify the pitfalls and potentially work past them. So in Helen's case, there's going to be a huge capital investment needed to either develop software for that, or to buy software for that, or to buy equipment for that. But also it may take quite a big interest from corporate clients or corporate institutions to assist with their employees who are using Helen's services for their kids. So there may be a collaboration effort as well. But by addressing those areas now and trying to identify the needs now, we're going to be far more ahead of the curve when we come online again. So even if you can't satisfy that need now, or even if you can't get that revenue structure working now, how does it look past that point? And what can we do to start setting up meetings or start setting up approaches to go past those various levels? Anybody else want to comment?
Damion, just while we're waiting. Yeah, sorry.
Can I just give Helen a quick little, just something that popped into my head as she was talking. I don't know if she's familiar. I think it's a group, they call themselves Nanny and Me, and it's an occupational therapist that has set up a fantastic business training caregivers. And I just wondered if training, I'm not sure in what capacity or what this is literally, maybe just could spark something. But is that perhaps an area that she could explore and look into?
So I know Helen was exploring that idea, and I'm going to talk on Helen's behalf if she doesn't mind, and she can definitely jump in. That is an area she's exploring, I think, as well. But on top of that, another opportunity there is looking at partnerships. So if somebody does have a platform but may not have the content, and Helen comes with the content, it could be a nice way of partnering up, and then providing a service that you previously couldn't provide either. All right. Any other comments or questions?
I'd be happy to help her connect if possible. I can sort of reach out to sort of maybe, of the person that started that business.
That'd be great.
Yeah, hi Jen. Yes, I'm familiar with them as well as what is it called? The other one. There's another also au pair, and they also do nanny services and that type of thing. Yeah, Marvelous Maids.
She literally went into a park and started working with I mean, as I say, it's in a very different area to what you're working in, but there could be some. Okay. So what I'm saying, it wouldn't be in competition with them, but they could perhaps help you.
Awesome.
All right. Just quickly. So it's worthwhile also understanding that there are virtually 4 different types of revenue models. And on top of that, there are 6 different types of recurring revenue models. So it could be worthwhile just sitting back a bit and just thinking what channels can we target to actually review our revenue models. And in that process, also find a bit of opportunity. And then like you said, I think partnerships, Damion, is also critical. There are people that have done a lot of work that are looking for associated partners to actually take their brand and their product to the market. So that could be well worth investigating.
George, I see your hands up.
Hi, it's me. Hi. I was just thinking, so I don't believe that celebrations are going to go back in the sense of mom spending thousands and thousands of rands on, luxury goods. So in terms of that, we've been working on just doing more DIY baking kits. And I think I've gotten a good response from that. And then also doing, we call the Tessa's Crumb Club. So in terms of a recurring model, I was thinking of maybe sending out baked goods monthly to people so that they don't need to come into our store.
So great example. So effectively what you guys are doing there then is you're using your knowledge around baking and helping mothers who can't maybe afford or won't want to spend big money on celebrations more to do their own baking. Yes, so yes, you might be giving out a bit of revenue, but you're gaining customers from a different market.
Talking about social distancing, so not many families are going to have big birthday parties anymore.
True.
So you need to find a way to either get the cake to them or in a way for them to be able to create it themselves.
Awesome. All right. The next aspect, guys, is cash flow. So moving on from revenue, cash flow is the next big one. So the phrase I'm sure you've all have heard already is revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash flow is reality. And effectively what that means, unless there's money in your bank, you can't spend it, right? So unless there's available funds, you can't spend it. So as good as we are at selling and as good as we are at potentially making profits, unless the money comes into our accounts, we can't actually use it. So at a time like this right now, obviously cash is king. So if we don't have cash right now, we firstly can't pay salaries, we can't afford a lifestyle, and effectively our business is looking at a very dire strait of potentially going into liquidation. So cash is really important. So items to consider around cash flow now is looking at who currently owes me money. Have I looked to my customers that owe me any outstanding debts, and have I contacted them directly? Because maybe that's one way of bringing cash in fast. The next question will be, do I have a forecast in place that I can understand or predict my bank balance at the end of May already? So do I know what I've got to pay to my suppliers, and potentially what money is coming from my customers? And the last point is, have you made enough effort to protect yourself in your personal capacity or your business capacity of any unexpected costs or unnecessary repayments? So most of our banks are giving out payment holidays for clients who are up to date, and to businesses as well. Have we taken the steps necessary to try and protect ourselves in that case as well? And I'd like to ask Karen just to share some information about cash flow forecasting, if she doesn't mind.
I don't mind. Are you going to ask me a specific question, Damion, or do you want me to just rabbit on?
I'd love the accountant teaching to come out a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So guys, I've had quite a bit of experience over the last 2 years with cash flow forecasting for some of my customers. The one moving millions and millions over the year, and having to be quite careful with where it goes and what happens to it. And I think the lessons that I've learned from that is it is so important to map this whole process out. And in the situation we're all in at the moment, perhaps you can't stomach further than 3 months, but you need to have something in place. I agree with what Damion is saying, is put that plan in place. Understand where your money is coming from or could come from. And then you need to make sure you know exactly where it is going. Understanding interest payments, understanding debit orders, and it's actually quite a good opportunity to figure out where the money is going to. So yes, map it out, bring in those compliance payments, make a picture, use color, whatever you do, but make it a real plan that you can intentionally work towards and understand what you are working with. I think I've learned that if people don't have a realistic picture of what the cash is doing, they often tend to put their heads in the sand and live under denial and just keep going with their current standard of living. And I think it's a really good way of realistically looking at where things are at. And I've learned this again and again with business owners that I have worked with, is that they often don't like to look and analyze what's happening with their bank accounts because it's scary. But I just want to encourage you, because it works. I've seen this process work again and again and again. So although it's tough to map this thing out forward, and especially now, I mean, none of us can really plan beyond a week. I mean, Ramaphosa is speaking to us today. We don't know what's happening. We don't know how the lockdown is going to be lifted. So it's very, very difficult to plan ahead, and anticipating what's going on is tough, but put something down there, and you can be flexible with it. So that's always it's tough to get people to buy into it and to do it, but put it down there. And my approach has always been to start at the top with what you have, what cash balance you have, then deduct or add on what you know you're going to what's coming in. Either you've got some receipts from debtors that you're expecting, or you're going to be selling some things for cash. Put it in there, and then you've got your cash available, so you know what money you've got on hand. And then what I normally do is I take the debit orders or the payments, I call them your definites. That's stuff that goes off your bank account that has to get paid. It's your salaries or your definites, and take that off. And then you take off your next lot of costs, and you get right down to the bottom. So for me, it's always nice to arrange it from the definite stuff to the information to the not so definite, because then at least you can see what your cash is doing. So just to encourage you, we're all in the same boat, and it'll really add value if you do this exercise. So I hope I answered your question.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Karen. To add to that, one thing we picked up from our side is a lot of our customers are scared of asking the question to their customers about paying their outstanding debt to them. And I think what we have to understand is no one likes asking for money. I think that's a fact of life. But the fact is that if you don't ask, you'll never know. So the worst they can say is, I can't afford to pay you back, or I don't have money to pay you back. But at least you then know and can potentially make an arrangement to get some money in from them, either partial payment or some form of payments. Whereas on the other side of that, if you didn't ask, you probably would never get the money in anyway. So our suggestion and our advice to any customer is make those phone calls, make those or send those messages out, and understand who still owes you cash, understand who you still owe cash to, and be transparent and open about how you're going to try and either settle your debts or get the money in from your clients.
Damion.
All right. Yep.
Damion. This is the third leg to the OptiGrowth team coming in. We were chatting to one or two customers over the last few days with those people that would like to ask for payment holidays, either from their bankers or whoever they owe money to. A lot of the bankers are actually asking you for a cash flow forecast. So, and whether you may be going for SME loan or a loan from business partners or your bank, they in any case are asking you to do this. So I suggest that you prepare one, that you've got it on record for everybody. And for those people that are on Sage, you can literally use your budget setup, and you can look at your figures for the previous financial year, and then you can go and play around with them to give them more accurate reporting. So I would suggest if you are on Sage, try it. I know that we've done it for a few customers. Obviously, that just gives you your income, potential cost of sales versus expenses. You would still have to then make note at the bottom of things like car payments that you might have to do through the company, or loan repayments that you have on hand. But bearing in mind that if you do have car payments, you also potentially are going to be asking whether it's Westbank or maybe Ford Credit or whoever it is, you're going to be asking them for a payment holiday as well. But that's a quick and easy way to do it. If you also don't have the actual spreadsheets, we've got those all on record for you that we can put into that folder as well to help.
All right, thanks, Barbara. Okay, I'm going to move on, guys, because we're running a bit out of time. The next fact to consider is differentiation. So are your competitors getting ahead of you? So differentiation talks particularly about how do we protect our business? How do we have our business stand out? And anyone who's been part of our group mastermind will probably remember this picture. If you think about your business as a castle and a moat around your business as your marketing plan or as your differentiation plan, the deeper and the wider your moat, the better you protect your business. And in times like this, going quiet on your customers and not communicating, not engaging with them is a huge risk to your business. And one of the big things that happens is if you do nothing now, by the time business switches on again, the competitors in your industry who have been communicating, have been talking, are the ones who will be ahead of you. And you'll probably spend more either in time or money to try and catch up or get ahead of them again. So to disconnect now and not to communicate and engage is a huge risk to your business. And whether that's trying to get new revenue in or just maintain current revenue or to even add value to your business. So a few things to consider on that side is, are you marketing or are you selling? And the key point here, I think, in a time like this is to consider that you are marketing to generate leads, not to get sales right now. We want to make sure that at this point, we remain front of mind to our markets and to our clients. And when they're ready to buy, they think of me first. They think of my business first. The next part is to consider if you aren't doing it, your competitors are doing it. And if you don't do it, they are definitely doing it. So rather be ahead of the game and keep in contact with your clients. And then thirdly, share thoughts, share information, do courtesy calls just to keep engaged. And I want to ask Adrian, if he doesn't mind, just to talk about what brand design are doing right now to keep client engagement going on their side. That's a nice example.
Can you guys all hear?
Yeah.
We basically introduced a 21-day challenge when the lockdown started. A lot of businesses, a lot of sort of industries and stuff did a similar sort of thing. And it was a very simple thing through our Facebook page where we had a shape a day, and we just invited general people, anyone who was sort of following us in that stream, to engage, to whatever the shape inspired you to do, to either do a drawing or anything. And we've expanded that now onto sort of words and thoughts and just really planting a seed. And the idea was initially the idea was actually just to keep our staff engaged, just as something fun. But what we noticed with the ramp up of activity on our site, we were lucky enough to get a couple of other people to join in, and that just, the sort of engagement really picked up, and that led to extra activity, and actually led to 1 or 2 business inquiries which came out of that. So the business inquiries that came out of it were completely almost unexpected, because it was the engagement and the communication that sort of led to that. It wasn't any attempt at sort of generating a sale or anything like that.
Awesome. Thanks, Adrian. So again, I think just the point there, it was the whole purpose of differentiating and keeping engagement is to be front of mind. Now, whether that results in a sale or not, I mean, if you get a sale, it's a bonus. But at least when they're ready to buy, or if they want to buy, you are the first, or you're front of mind to be called. And I think that's what all businesses right now need and want, is that when business switches on again, that I as a service provider are the ones that they remember, the ones that they appreciate, and the ones that see you added value to their time during lockdown. And that will make a huge difference to your business going forward, especially when times are going to be tough coming on now. Anyone have any comments or questions there? Okay, I'm going to move on. There's any hands raised? Our last point is just about the most, I suppose, frustrating part, or probably the scariest part of any business owners dealing in the day, is financial management. And this point is purely talk about the consideration of, if I don't keep track of what's going on financially in my business, the chances are I don't know where I'm going forward to. And I think, as a reminder on this point, accounting will focus on the past. So do I have up-to-date figures? And do I have all my compliance in line? Am I tax cleared? Am I paying my UIF, my workers' compensation? All those sort of things up to date. So when I look for a bit of assistance from the banks or from any loan people I borrowed money from, I'm up to date with them. And then finance looks at what's going to happen in the future. How do I make provision, or how do I plan for what's going on ahead? So clear considerations about financial management is about the fact that I have to know what's going on right now. Can I see the effects of what this pandemic is having on my business, the drop in revenue, the drop in expenses potentially, the cost of my staff as part of my company structure, and how do I plan that going forward? What do I think I can afford going forward if business starts at a certain rate that I think it might start? And like Kieran mentioned, the chances are that'll change daily. We don't know what Ramaphosa will say to us tonight, and your forecast may have to be amended after tonight's speech, because he may extend the lockdown, he may not. He may open up your industry, or he may not, as part of bringing on new business or opening up the economy again. The next thing to consider is, are your books up to date? Obviously, do we have information up to today's date? And then can we also review our profit and loss statements, our balance sheets, our debtors age analysis and creditors age analysis, to understand who owes us money and who do we owe money to? And then lastly, are we looking at what is to come? Do we have a plan going forward on what I can afford and what my potential profit margins would like? Just as a separate note here, and it might not fit in very nicely with this topic, but by assessing my forecast and understanding what I'm going to be getting in, I can also start considering my price points. How much am I going to charge for my services or products going forward as well? Because I personally feel that moving forward, many businesses are going to take the approach of undercutting their prices to try and get back into the market, rather focus on volume sales than profitable sales. And I think it may be a huge factor coming to business about which businesses can either understand that they can afford that, or which businesses are adding more value than the prices that they're charging. Anybody want to comment on that?
No, that's a good point, Damion. I just want to remind everybody, if you are a customer of ours, we do have templates available for things like cash flow analysis in the short term and longer. So company structures, if you want templates on it, just let us know. We will also share that in our folders and you can collect it from there. So just a reminder.
All right, so those are the 5 points, guys, that we felt were critical to identify and view objectively as moving your business forward into a state where business will be different. If you've either considered part of those points, if you've considered none of those points, we are hoping that at least now you can take those 5 aspects, which is your company structure, it's looking at your cash flow, looking at your differentiation model, looking at your forecasting, and looking at your revenue structures. And if you can understand those and put those together and articulate what they mean to you and mean to your business, the chances are you will either be ready for what happens post lockdown, or you at least can make decisions towards that lockdown period. And the best time is to do it now. We have time available. We are pushing forward to crunch time at every single day of this lockdown period. And now is the best time to start doing it. All right. Anyone have any questions or want to share some thoughts?
I was just wondering if anybody have a comment about our, what we're going to hear tonight from our president. Any predictions?
I think we're a long way away from any sign of being over this thing. If you consider that our infection rate at the moment is about 400 times more than what it was when we went into lockdown. So I think we're in for a long haul.
Yeah, there's a lot of feeling that it's actually going to be extended, Adrian and team. So definitely interesting times. Now, can you imagine if this is extended by another week or two, the despair that we'll have, just the rebellion against it, I think, from the poverty-stricken market. People are struggling, they don't have food. So it's going to add a security question to survive the business as well. So, there's a lot of concern about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree totally, because we haven't even hit winter yet.
Yeah, that's true.
So our hospitals are normally flooded with asthma and tuberculosis. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Karen, your feeling up there in the north, in beautiful KZN?
No, I was going to say I'm expecting a plan as to a rollout of unlocking the lockdown. That's what I'm expecting. And I agree with what you are saying, Henk. We are starting to feel the effects of the frustration. People are starting to behave badly, and that is a big concern, is the unrest up this side of the world. So yeah. It's a tough decision.
No, for sure. Mandy, you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm just finding on my floral networks, in the South African networks, a lot of the families are the sole breadwinners in their industry, and there's a lot of bitterness at the moment. Initially, it started off, let's stand together, let's hold hands, and let's work through this together. But now it's a matter of survival. The one lady's got 15 staff, and I can just feel her anxiety when she posts things on the group. And tension starting to rise amongst the people with uncertainty and no direction.
I must say the one person I don't want to be right now is Cyril Ramaphosa, to be honest.
No, I agree.
Right.
I just wanted to add there as well. I came across a very nice word. It's quite nice for us to be able to describe the emotions that we are feeling. And a lot of people say a lot of different words, and we're all feeling this thing. They're calling it anticipatory grief. And I think that's what we're all struggling with, is that we're going through a grief cycle. We've gone through the shock. There's a lot of people in the anger phase, but some people have gone beyond that, and they're starting to make plans and prepare for what's coming. But it's anticipatory grief. We're just not sure what's happening, and we're so used to planning and moving and going forward. This is very difficult.
It is. I agree.
So I just want to invite everybody, if you do want to raise an item or a question or topic, please let us know. We've got a healthy forum of interested business investors and business owners, and we will gladly share information. If you don't want to be a topical speaker perhaps, or raise anything on a forum like this, you can contact us privately, and we can share it on our folders to make it available to anybody else. All right, Damion, that's it from me. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Just to add to that, on Thursday we have brand design joining us for a discussion on particularly differentiation and marketing strategies. So anyone who's keen to understand how to look at your marketing plan and marketing strategy going forward, particularly in this time and post-lockdown, Adrian and Mike are presenting on Thursday, so it should be very interesting. All right, guys, thanks for your time and your effort. We really appreciate your connectivity.
Thank you once again for hosting us.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Best of luck.
Thank you, guys. Thanks very much.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.